So, what is ColorGear and how does it work? Well, the simplest answer to that is precision. So, what do I mean by that? Well, this is a shot from the final film, from What Lies Between Us. And you can see that it's a really dark scene, it's a pretty intense scene, but it was shot at golden hour, and the shot has been warmed up and sort of conformed to what we want for our scene, but this is the raw footage over here. So let's come over here to the DaVinci panel. I can see I've got the scopes up. I'm going to move these out of the way really quick so you can see the full panel here. I'm going to demonstrate within DaVinci how ColorGear works and what it is, how it works, and why it works, and what I mean by color precision. So for most people who are new to color grading or are doing their grading like in Final Cut Pro or other type programs, they're familiar with this, which is the three-color wheel, the three-way color corrector. Now I'm going to show you, if you look at the scopes here, if we look at the histogram is probably the easiest to read for most of you. You can see we've got a very even distribution here on the color channels. Everything's spaced evenly. This looks like it's pretty well white balanced. In fact, if you look here at the waveform monitor and the RGB parade, you can tell that we have a really nice even white balance, even though the shot looks a little blue. But if I were to go into the three-way color corrector, and let's say I were going to try and warm it up like this, immediately you can see that the histogram on the blue and the green channels is starting to get imbalanced. And this is what I would call an imprecise color grade. And what I mean by that is what you're doing here, and this is why when you grade things improperly, well, there's no improper way to do it, but if you grade things this way, which is not a precise way, what happens is you begin to bend the image. You begin to warp the image and destroy it, which is why if you're noticing your color grades breaking down very quickly when you try to do really heavy grades, this is why. This is what's going on in the image, and this is why it's falling apart. And the reason is that anytime you change a value, you affect the other two. What I mean by that is, or the other three, I should say. When you change a luminance value, the red value, the green value, or the blue value in your grades, they're all interconnected. So anytime you change something in one channel, you need to offset that change in another channel to have a precise grade in order to allow the image to maintain its integrity. So I'm going to reset that, and you can, well, here I'll show you some other stuff. If I try to maybe balance it out with the gamma, you see that's not really working. I mean, this is balancing out, but this is not. And you're probably thinking, well, that's how the grades are supposed to work. They're supposed to change the blue and the green and the red values. No, not really. Not in the way that you're thinking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reset all of this. I'm going to reset that and that back to its normal image. And then I'm going to show you well, here I'll actually bounce over. You can see I've got a couple of different grades already loaded in here. Let's go next. You can see this is done manually, and then this was done with ColorGear, and there's zero difference. There's the ColorGear version. Here's the manual version. If you go to ColorGear, you can see that, wow, our histogram is intact, and yet this image is completely different from the original. But we have a nice, balanced, precise grade on the footage. We also have it done here manually, but you can see that I needed many more nodes to do it than with ColorGear. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you using a stopwatch how ColorGear will give you precise grades very, very quickly. So first let's do it. Let's bring up the stopwatch here. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to analyze our footage. So let's go ahead and start the clock. All right, so we've got an image that's got kind of a blue cast here. It was shot at golden hour, so there's a mixed light here. There's warm light coming from the direct sunlight, and then all of this blue cast in the shadows is from the giant blue dome that's up above. And even though we saw in the histogram that this is rather correctly white balanced, it does look rather bluish all the way through. So what we want to do is we want to warm this up, but the one thing we want to avoid is Mark has very olive skin. And what normally happens when you try to warm this up is you get Oompa Loompa skin. Skin tone turns rather orange when you try to warm stuff up. And we want to avoid that. So let me go ahead and pause that. So we're going to do a grade in which we actually warm this up without getting what I call Oompa Loompa skin, which is that orange skin that looks like it's from that Willy Wonka movie. Okay, so 42 seconds to analyze. That's not going to change no matter what you do. Now, what do I need to do to get this image where I want it? So let's look at that. I know I want to, let's go ahead and start let's go ahead and continue. Okay, so I know I want to suck some blue out of this image. I want to lower the black levels because all video footage is always shot around broadcast black and not true black. So I want to lower that. And then I want to warm the image up and, of course, avoid the Oompa Loompa skin. So I'm going to need 3 nodes to do that in ColorGear. I'm going to need 3 nodes with an additional 2 parallel nodes to do it manually. So already we're a minute in, looking at the grade and figuring out what we need to do to get everything to look right. So I went to version 1 here. Then you'll see that this is, let's reset all grades and nodes, just so we know that we're back to the beginning. Let's go back to our stopwatch. And so I'm going to create and label, well, I know I need 3 nodes to do it in ColorGear. I know I need 3 nodes plus an additional 2 parallel nodes to do it manually. So I'm going to, for the sake of fairness, I'm going to create 3 nodes and 2 parallel nodes and then label 3 nodes and then stop to show you how much time that takes. So, and I'm going to use shortcut keys to do that. So I'm using Option S for the serial keys and Option P for the parallel keys. So I'm going to click Start. I'm going to go here and go serial node, and then parallel node, and then I'm going to label this first one manual blue. I'm going to change this one to manual density. Ah, dang it. Manual density. And this third one is going to be manual warming. Okay, and we're going to go to stop the stopwatch. Pause. Okay, so let's get this all sort of organized. So minute 41 seconds is our baseline. That's how long it's going to take, no matter what we do, to analyze this image, figure out what we need to do to grade it and get it where we want it, and then to set up our node tree and get them labeled. Okay, so now the clock is stopped, and I actually just want this warmer because we are going to use the Simply Warmer gear to correct that manual warmer. Since we have time, let's go ahead and write this out actually. Manual density, and manual blue is fine. Okay, so here's our tree. Here is our node tree. These are the parallels which we'll use to sort of keep his skin from turning Oompa Loompa, and then the parallel key. Okay, so this is our manual grade. When I started working as a colorist, I was doing many of the same operations over and over and over again. It took me, I guess, about a year before I realized that there were about 37 different unique operations that I was doing over and over, but were interchangeable. In other words, they all worked in an interconnective manner. And if I only had macros, if I had something like within Photoshop, you have something called macros where you can record the operations and then you can just play them back over and over again, like in a batch format. And while you do have power grades and stills and LUTs and such within DaVinci or any other program, those are basically just looks that are pre-made. And what ColorGear is it's a piano, essentially. If you wanted to make music, if you wanted to write a song or play a song, you just sit down at the piano and you play the piano if you know how. But if you had to build the piano every single time you wanted to play piano, you would just get really, really frustrated because, you know, let's say you needed a C and an E and a G key to create the chord, and then a couple of overtones and a harmonic up above to create the sound that you wanted. And for each, you had to build the C key, you had to build, you know, you had to stretch the wire and get it tuned for each one of these keys and then actually attach it to the key itself. And with all these, the same thing with all these others, it would be a giant pain in the butt to play music. Well, color grading is kind of similar. I mean, it is, you are kind of making music with color. And what ColorGear does is it saves you the time of having to build a piano every single time you want to play a song. And to demonstrate that, I'm going to do a manual grade. I'm going to go in, we're going to start the clock, and I'm going to blow through this really fast. I'm not going to explain what I'm doing, but then I will go back after I stop the clock and explain each step, what I'm doing and why. Okay, minute 41. Okay, so we're going to click start. And I'm going to go here, and I'm going to just take out a little bit. Oh, I got to get, dang it, I got to gang these. Let's reset. I'm going to ungang the curves. I'm going to do a little bit of a minus blue adjustment here. I'm going to go to the density, and I know density is just going to be negative 0.07 here. Come on. And just because of his skin, I'm going to pump this up by like 0.1 or 0.01. I'm going to warm this up. I'm going to do the main node of the warming key, and then I'm going to stop. So let's see, this is going to be -2, or 0.2 I should say. Definitely like a -0.04. Whoa, way too much. Hang on. I'm going to adjust the gamma here. And then I'm going to do something over here, and this is going to be part of our Oompa Loompa grade. I'm going to create, I'm going to do some isolation. I'm going to, basically, you think of this saturation thing here as like a notch filter, or like an EQ, like a graphical EQ for color. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little magenta out, and then I'm going to take out some red. And then I'm going to stop the clock. Where'd it go? Dang it. And pause. Okay, so without, let's go ahead and A-B this. Let's go ahead and 3 minutes 54 seconds is how long that took. Okay, so if we turn off all these nodes, you'll see that here is our base footage. We've reduced the blue a little bit, we've changed the density, and we've warmed it up, and that looks pretty dang good. In fact, let's go ahead and just compare that. It's going to be a little off, but let's compare it to the ColorGear grade. And you can see that it's pretty close. What I'm doing here is I'm bouncing back and forth between different grades, and so the way you do that is you add versions, and then you can just tab through previous version and next version. So here's the version we just did, and then let's see how it compares to the ColorGear version. It's pretty close. There's a little bit of, I can see a little bit of color cast here in the maroon, and that's what I want to fix, and that's what these parallel nodes are for. And there's a little bit of green still left in his skin, and I want to change that. So I'm going to pause the recording here for a second. Okay, had to run the heater for a little bit. It's freezing in here, and whenever I run the heater, the noise leaks into the microphone. So we're back in here. I started to work and I realized I wasn't recording. All I did here is I took this key here and lowered the opacity way down because I only need a touch of it. And you can see here's the adjustment we had left off with. So with this key, oh wait a minute, gotta start the timer. Okay. So with this key, we're going to do something called hue versus luminance, and we're going to make some adjustments to the maroon color. just a slight notch here in the yellow. And then in this one, I just need a slight little bit of desaturation. Let's see. There we go. Okay, and that's it. Pause. 4 minutes and 40 seconds is our grand total time to get this look manually. And okay, so that's it. So 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Let's go ahead and write that down in our little thing here. So 3:54 to do the basic, 4 minutes, 40 seconds to do the full grade. And so now let's do it in ColorGear. Let's see, how do I, okay, this one is, let's go ahead and, just to be fair, reset all grades and nodes just to be sure. Okay, so before we determine that our 1 minute and 41 seconds is what we need to analyze and set up our nodes, so let's go ahead and set up 2 nodes really quick to catch up. We'll call this one manual blue. We'll call this one manual density. Oh wait, no, this is not manual, this is ColorGear. So CGP density, CGP minus blue. And oops, CGP simply warmer. Okay, and these names are coming from the names of the gears that I'm going to use. So now we're back to minute 41. Sorry, I'm having technical issues here with trying to, Camtasia keeps crashing while I'm trying to work in DaVinci. So where were we? We were at, oh, we were going to do ColorGear. So let's start the stopwatch. Let's see, we are at 4 minutes, 40 seconds. Okay, so let's reset this. And minute 41 is what we said was our time before. So but before I start the watch, let's make sure that I'm not cheating. Let's turn all these nodes off, and you can see that we are at our, this is our baseline footage. When we turn these on, nothing is changing. Okay, so back to the stopwatch. I'm going to sit down and play the piano. Start. I'm going to do an adjustment, minus blue. I'm going to do an adjustment, density. And I'm going to go to the warm gears and add simply warmer, and we are done. Pause. 14 seconds. So let's compare this to this. Okay, so we are here. Next. Oops. Previous. Okay, so here we are. Here is the ColorGear grade, and there's the manual. And you can see there is 0 difference on the scope. Well, the scopes keep chattering because you can see them flashing around, but there's 0 difference between those 2 grades. Here, if you compare them on the scopes. And one took 4 minutes and 40 seconds, and if we had 14 seconds to a minute 40, that is 1:55. So less than 2 minutes. So it's twice as fast, just from that standpoint. But if you look at the actual grading time, it's 14 seconds versus 2 minutes and almost 3 minutes. So that is the power of ColorGear. And you're probably saying, okay, Cheyenne, how did you know, let's go back to the ColorGear grade. How did you know that these 3 gears would get you where you wanted to go? Well, it's just experience. And I impart some of that wisdom in my tutorials about how I know how to do this. But these LUTs, these 3D LUTs that I'm applying here are the gears in ColorGear. And they were designed from, you know, if you spend, like what I was doing for the first year, doing 50 to 100, grading 50 to 100 clips a day, 5 days a week, 365 days a year, you begin to be able to look at footage and instantly know, okay, I need to do this, and then this, and then this. And the reason I used 3 nodes rather than 1 node is because the first thing I wanted to do, the way that nodes work and the way that layers work in After Effects and Premiere Pro, and the way that ColorGear will work in Final Cut Pro and Premiere Pro as well, is this is your footage input here. This is your viewer output here. So your footage starts here, then passes into the first node. It's corrected in the first node, and then passes into the second node. It's corrected in the second node with whatever you apply here, and then passes into the third node, and the third node then applies its adjustments, and then all of that gets loaded out to the viewer. So if I were to turn these off, there's the warmer, there's the density, there's the minus blue. You can see our raw footage. And so the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to suck a little blue out of the image, which I did, which turned his skin tone a little pink. And then I want to get the blacks down. I want to do that after I adjust the blue. I'll explain that in the color theory tutorials on the website. And so this is the density adjustment. So now after the blue's corrected and the density is adjusted, now I want to warm up my footage. And you can see now his skin is not orange. It looks really, really nice. And now I have a baseline grade. This is my tech pass. And if you look down here at the scopes, I did not bend my image. My highlights are where they're supposed to be. My midtones are where they're supposed to be. My shadows are where they're supposed to be. If I were to go in and isolate this, in fact, let's go in and create a mask and isolate his skin tone, just so we can look at it by itself. And to show you what I'm doing, I'm creating a mask here. But if you hit Shift H, you can see that that's just the skin tone isolated. And our skin tone, if we do that again, you can see here on the scopes, yes, we've brought the blue out of the skin tone. We've left the green and the red in. The red is right pretty much here. And our skin tone is pointing right over here where our skin tone should be pointing. It's all really, really nice. We didn't go orangey with it. And everything's balanced out between pretty much where we want exposure-wise. I mean, if we wanted to, we could bring this up a little bit. We could bring the gamma up a little bit and make sure that these all fall along this sort of middle point line here, this 50% line. But we're done with the grade. So that's the power of ColorGear. ColorGear allows you to make these grades incredibly fast and incredibly accurate without bending your image disproportionately. You don't bend the image out of shape. This is why I'm able to do the really heavy grades that people see when they look at my Vimeo channel, when they look at the films that I make, and they see these really dense, heavy grades, and they're like, how did you do that without the H.264 codec falling apart, or any video codec falling apart? And the reason is that I'm doing it precisely. And so what ColorGear allows you to do is, right now, if there are 37 distinct operations or sets of operations, in other words, if we go back to the other, let's go back to, is it P? What I mean by operations is each one of these nodes has, or except for this one, this is our output node. This is the one node that ties all of these 3 parallel nodes together. It sort of mixes them evenly. But each one of these nodes had an operation done to it. In other words, I sucked out the blue here with the manual blue. On the density, I lowered the black levels to the appropriate levels. And then on these 3, I warmed it up without creating Oompa Loompa skin, and all of that goes out the same. Now, the time that I spent as a colorist, I found out which ones work and which ones don't work, and which ones I kept doing over and over and over again. You just started seeing a pattern forming. And there are 37 distinct sets of operations or macros that can get you any grade you want. So if you figure out of those 37, 6 of them will actually cancel each other out. So you can only use one of those 6. So that gives you 32. So 32 squared is 1,024. So that's 1,024 possible grades that you can get just with the baseline gears. Now, there are 74 right now. There will be 77 by the time this is released. Gears. So even if we just go off the 74 number, that's 5,476 distinct color grades that are possible to you using ColorGear versus Magic Bullet looks or power grades or anything else in which you are just applying a pre-made set of looks. This is a power grade right here. This is a still or a power grade or a look. And when you come into DaVinci, you have to load all these up. In other words, you have to go into your gallery and you have to, drag these down into your, into your viewer. Let's clear that. I don't want that there. You have to go in and find your grades, and you have to preload this. But with ColorGear, you don't have to do that. With ColorGear, everything's already loaded in. All you have to do is right-click, and boom, you're in. They're all right here. Easy to get to, nothing to preload. Once it's installed, it's good to go. And of course, I'm talking about ColorGear Pro. And ColorGear Pro will work in the same manner, pretty much, with DaVinci Resolve, both Pro and Lite. It'll work with Final Cut Pro, it'll work with Premiere Pro, and it'll work with SpeedGrade. And of course, ColorGear Toolkit, which is pretty much the same thing, except it's not LUT based. It is actually preset based, but it's the same basic thing. Those gears are available in ColorGear Toolkit. Plus, with the Toolkit, you get to use After Effects' noise reduction engine. And so what I've done is I've tweaked there's a reduced noise effect in After Effects, but default it doesn't really work that well. So what I did is I went in and actually basically kind of tuned it, kind of did a tune-up on it and said, okay, that for it to work, it's got to target noise in this channel, and it's got to target noise in this channel, and the noise size has to be set somewhere between here and there. So I went in and tweaked the parameters of it so that you could use it, especially with DSLR footage, to go in and clean up the noise that DSLR footage seems to be inherent within DSLR footage. But that gear is not available outside of After Effects. You do have your own noise reduction here. You can see it's grayed out because I do not have an NVIDIA card on my system. If I did, I could show you how to use these to... so once I get an NVIDIA card, I'll show you how to use the noise reduction here. It's pretty simple, just threshold, blend, and radius. So it's pretty basic, but it's really, really powerful. And so is the tracking and the masking stuff here in Resolve. But essentially, that's how ColorGear works. ColorGear is a piano. It's a pre-made piano. All you have to do is follow the tutorials, learn to play piano, and then when you want to grade, you just sit down and you just press the keys you want. You don't have to build the keys. You don't have to do it by hand. And of course, you still have control. In other words, I can still go in here and let's say I want to do a grade from here, and I want to do like a three-way. I want to lower the gamma a little bit. Oh, sorry, I have to add the serial node. Sorry. Parallel nodes you can't adjust this on, but if I wanted to adjust the gamma on this, I could. That was quite intense. I could come over here and do some custom curves. Or I could do it with ColorGear. I can, this curves adjustment here, let's reset that. Leave the gamma where it is. And I want a curves adjustment. I know exactly what that's going to be. It's going to be right here. There you go. Saves you time. Saves you a ton of time. So if you want to spend 4 minutes and 40 seconds, or what did we say, what was the final time on that one? It was 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Almost 5 minutes. 5 minutes grading each clip. And of course you can copy that to other clips. But how many clips are you going to have in your film, in your short film, your feature film, that need to be graded individually? And you're going to need to do a tech pass on all of them because you want to balance them out. So you want to balance them out the same. Well, you're going to get consistency from ColorGear because it's going to balance them all out equally, and it's going to save you a lot of time. So if you have to spend 5 minutes per clip balancing every clip versus 2 minutes, that's 3 minutes. Depending on how many. Let's say you have 25 to 30 clips. Times 5, that's 105 minutes times 30, that's 150 minutes. That's almost 3 hours. You're going to spend 3 hours versus 2 minutes times 30 versus an hour. That's 3 times faster. In that particular scenario, it's 3 times faster to use ColorGear than it is to do it by hand or to use anything else because you're not applying looks. You're not applying presets. You're applying macros. You're applying step-by-step modular adjustments that will get you where you want to go quicker than doing it by hand. And that's how ColorGear works.